My husband Dante thought he was the smartest man in Atlanta when he video called me to say he sold our penthouse out from under me. He bragged about the cash deal. He bragged about his new life in Miami with his 24-year-old mistress. He even laughed when he told me I had 24 hours to vacate the premises. He had no idea that the shell company he sold our home to was owned by the very woman he was trying to destroy. My name is Simone, and at 34 years old, I make my living managing corporate crises. Handling a cheating husband was just another day at the office. Before I tell you how I evicted my own husband from the home he thought he sold, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever had to teach someone a lesson they would never forget. I was sitting in a glass-walled conference room in downtown Chicago finalizing a merger worth $300 million when my phone vibrated against the mahogany table. It was a FaceTime request from Dante. I checked my watch. It was 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. Dante usually spent his afternoons pretending to be a real estate investor at the country club while living off the allowance I deposited into our joint account. I excused myself from the board members and stepped into the hallway, answering the call with a professional neutrality I had perfected over a decade of high-stakes negotiations. The image on the screen was chaotic. Behind Dante, I could see professional movers taping up brown boxes in our living room. My living room. The custom Italian leather sofa I had imported last year was already wrapped in plastic. Dante was grinning his teeth blindingly white against his skin, holding a glass of champagne in one hand and his phone in the other. He looked like a man who had just won the lottery. "Hey, babe," he said, his voice dripping with a toxic mix of charm and malice. "I have some good news and some bad news for you. The bad news is that I am divorcing you effective immediately. The good news, at least for me, is that I just sold this apartment. Cash deal. Fast close. The money is already being wired to an offshore account you cannot touch." I did not blink. I did not scream. I just watched as he panned the camera around the room. I saw my collection of first edition books being carelessly tossed into a bin. I saw the view of the Atlanta skyline that I had worked 80-hour weeks to afford. Dante turned the camera back to himself, his eyes gleaming with triumph. "I am moving to Miami, Simone," he continued, taking a sip of the champagne. "I am starting fresh. New city, new business ventures, and a new woman who actually knows how to treat a man. Come here, baby. Say hi to the ex-wife." The camera swiveled to the left and my stomach tightened. Chantal was lounging on the armchair my grandmother had left me. She was 24 years old, beautiful in a plastic Instagram-filtered way, and she was wearing my robe. It was a vintage silk kimono hand-painted that I had bought in Kyoto. She had it falling off one shoulder, giggling as she waved at the phone with a manicured hand. "Hi, Simone." Chantal said, her voice high and breathy. "Thanks for the robe. It is super soft. Dante said you would not mind since you are too busy working to wear nice things anyway." Dante laughed, pulling her into the frame. "You have 24 hours to get whatever trash you have left out of here, Simone. The new owners want the place empty by Friday. Enjoy looking for a new place to live. Maybe you can sleep in that fancy office of yours." He waited for the tears. He waited for me to beg him to stop, to ask him how he could do this after 5 years of marriage. He wanted a reaction. He wanted to see the strong, capable Simone break down so he could feel powerful. Instead, I looked him dead in the eye through the screen. "Sounds good," I said, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. Dante frowned, his smile faltering for a fraction of a second. "That is it. That is all you have to say. I just sold your house, Simone. I am leaving you." I checked my watch again. "I have to get back to a meeting, Dante. We will talk when I get back to Atlanta tonight." I ended the call before he could respond. My hand was steady as I slipped the phone back into my pocket. Dante thought he had just pulled off the heist of the century, selling a $2 million penthouse for a quick $500,000 in cash just to spite me. He thought he was walking away with a fortune. He did not know that the anonymous investment group that just bought the property was a subsidiary of Phoenix Holdings. And he certainly did not know that Phoenix Holdings belonged 100% to me. I took a deep breath, smoothed my blazer, and walked back into the boardroom. The real work was just beginning. I settled into my seat in first class, the leather cool against my skin. The flight attendant offered me a glass of vintage champagne, but I declined. I needed a clear head for what was coming. My phone vibrated on the tray table, cutting through the low hum of the cabin. A notification from our joint bank account lit up the screen. It was a withdrawal alert. $50,000. I stared at the numbers glowing against the black background. 50,000. Dante was not wasting any time. He was likely buying Chantal a ring or putting a deposit on a luxury car he could not afford to maintain. He thought that money was his entitlement, a parting gift for his years of so-called service as my husband. He forgot where that money came from. He forgot who filled that account every month while he played real estate mogul with zero actual deals. My finger hovered over the screen, but I did not feel the sting of betrayal anymore. Instead, I felt a cold, hard clarity. The image of the withdrawal triggered a memory so vivid, it felt like I was back there. 5 years ago, in our old apartment before the penthouse, before the millions. Dante was on his knees on the cheap laminate floor. He was weeping, snot running down his face, clutching the hem of my skirt like a child. He had gambled away $200,000 of investor money. Money he did not have. He was facing prison time. Federal prison. Please, Simone, he had begged, his voice cracking and pathetic. You are the only one who can save me. I will be better. I swear I will serve you for the rest of my life, just do not let them take me. I looked at that pathetic man, the man I loved back then. I saw his fear, I saw his desperation, and I made a choice. I liquidated my own assets. I took out loans in my name. I paid off his debts. I saved him from a cage. I scrubbed his record clean and built him up. I gave him the title of investor so he would not feel small next to my success. I created the monster that was now trying to devour me. But monsters have weaknesses. And I knew exactly where his were because I had built the armor that protected them. He thought he was robbing me blind. He thought he was taking $50,000 to start his new life. In reality, he was just handing me the final piece of evidence I needed. That withdrawal was not just a theft, it was a confession. It was unauthorized use of funds crossing state lines. It was grand larceny. A slow smile spread across my face. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a predator watching its prey walk into a trap. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I had saved for emergencies. Not the police, not yet. My executive assistant. The call connected after one ring. Yes, Ms. Williams. I kept my voice low, calm, and terrifyingly even. Dante just initiated a transfer. He is moving faster than we anticipated. I paused, looking out the window at the clouds below. It is time. Activate the Phoenix Protocol. Freeze the assets, but leave that $50,000 pending. Let him think he has it, and send the file to the district attorney. I hung up and finally accepted the glass of champagne the flight attendant had left nearby. Dante wanted a war. He did not realize he was fighting a nuclear power with a slingshot. I took a sip. The bubbles tasted like victory. By the time I landed in Atlanta, my husband would be walking on a minefield he helped lay himself. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime revealing the private foyer of the penthouse floor. The air usually smelled of white tea and silence, but tonight it smelled of cheap cologne and betrayal. From behind the double mahogany doors of my unit, the bass of a trap beat thumped against the walls like a erratic heartbeat. I stood there for a moment, smoothing the lapels of my blazer, letting the sheer audacity of the situation wash over me. Dante was not just kicking me out. He was celebrating my eviction in the home I paid for. I stepped up to the keypad. I punched in the code. 1908. My birthday. The small light flashed an angry red. Access denied. I tried it one more time just to be sure. Red again. A humorless laugh bubbled in my throat. Dante had actually taken the time to change the entry code. He probably thought this was a power move. He probably imagined me standing here in the hallway, banging on the door, weeping and begging to be let in while he laughed on the other side. He wanted a scene. He wanted the desperate ex-wife narrative to be complete. The service elevator dinged behind me. I turned to see Reggie, the night shift security supervisor, stepping out. He looked anxious, his hand hovering over his radio. He knew me well. He knew I was the one who signed the checks for the building's holiday bonuses, not Dante. Mrs. Williams. Reggie stammered, his eyes darting from me to the vibrating door. I apologize. Mr. Dante called down earlier. He said you were no longer a resident. He said if you showed up, I was to escort you off the premises. Reggie looked miserable. He knew this was wrong, but he was just doing his job based on the lies he had been fed. I held up a hand, silencing him before he could apologize further. My expression remained impassive. It is fine, Reggie. I know he put in a work order to change the digital locks. Reggie nodded vigorously. Yes, ma'am. He did it an hour ago. Look, I can call the police. I can tell them this is an illegal lockout. You have rights. I stepped closer to him, my voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. That will not be necessary, Reggie. Go back to the desk. If anyone calls from this unit complaining about an intrusion, tell them the security system is undergoing maintenance. Reggie hesitated, looking confused. But how will you get in? I reached into my clutch. I did not pull out a key. I pulled out a sleek, matte black card with a gold chip embedded in the center. It was not a resident key fob. It was a master admin access card. Dante thought he was clever because he knew how to reset a 4-digit PIN. He did not know that 6 months ago I acquired the property management firm that operates this building. I did not just live here. I effectively owned the digital infrastructure of the entire high-rise. This card overrode every manual lock, every biometric scanner, and every user code in the building. Go downstairs, Reggie. He looked at the black card, then back at my face. A look of understanding dawned on him. He nodded once, pressed the button for the lobby, and the elevator doors closed, swallowing him back into safety. I turned back to the mahogany doors. I did not knock. I did not shout. I simply tapped the black card against the sensor. The mechanism whirred instantly. The light turned a solid, obedient green. The heavy deadbolt retracted with a loud mechanical clunk that sounded like a judgment gavel coming down. I pushed the door open. The blast of music hit me full force, carrying the scent of spilled liquor and marijuana smoke. I stepped over the threshold, my heels clicking sharply on the marble foyer. The lioness was home, and the hyenas were about to find out they were eating in her den. The living room looked like a hurricane had touched down inside a luxury boutique. Cardboard boxes were stacked haphazardly, blocking the panoramic view. The air was thick with the smell of cheap takeout and stale perfume. In the center of the chaos sat Loretta, my mother-in-law. She was sprawled on my velvet chaise lounge, her feet propped up on a packing crate. In one hand, she held a half-eaten chicken wing. In the other, she clutched a bottle of Chateau Margaux, a vintage I had been saving for my 10th anniversary. She was drinking it straight from the bottle. She looked up as I entered, her eyes narrowing into slits. She did not look surprised. She looked annoyed, like I was a pest control problem that had returned after treatment. She wiped her greasy mouth on the sleeve of her silk blouse, a blouse I recognized as one of mine. Well, look who decided to grace us with her presence, she sneered, her voice slurred. The Ice Queen returns. I thought you were busy saving corporations, or whatever it is you do while my son suffers. I did not respond immediately. I surveyed the room, taking in the desecration of my sanctuary. A glob of barbecue sauce stained the white rug. A half-empty pizza box sat on top of my baby grand piano. It was a deliberate display of disrespect. I walked over to her, my heels sinking slightly into the plush carpet. I reached down and plucked the wine bottle from her hand. It was nearly empty. This bottle cost $2,000, Loretta, I said calmly, placing it out of her reach. It was a gift from a client. You are drinking it like it is grape juice. She scoffed, struggling to sit up. Oh, please. Always about the money with you. That is your problem, Simone. You think your fancy gifts and your big checks make you a good wife. They do not. Dante needs a woman, not a bank account. He needs someone who knows how to keep a home warm, not someone who treats marriage like a business merger. She gestured around the wrecked room as if it were a palace she had built. He sold this place because he had to. A man needs to feel like the king of his castle. You made him feel like a guest. He did what any real man would do. He took back his power. And it is perfectly legal, honey. He showed me the papers. His name was on the deed, too. I looked at this woman, this enabler who had raised a narcissist and called it love. She honestly believed she was in the right. She believed her son was the victim of my success. His name was on the deed because I put it there, I said, my voice low and dangerous. I paid the mortgage. I paid the taxes. I paid for the furniture you are currently destroying. And as for legal, she laughed a harsh, barking sound. Don't quote laws to me, little girl. Possession is 9/10 of the law. And right now we possess this penthouse. You are the intruder. Dante has a new woman now. Someone young. Someone fresh. Someone who will give me grandbabies instead of quarterly reports. You are expired goods, Simone. Go find some other poor sap to emasculate. She reached for the wine bottle again, her hand shaking slightly. I caught her wrist. My grip was not violent, but it was firm enough to make her freeze. You are right about one thing, Loretta, I said, leaning in close so she could smell the expensive perfume I wore like armor. Possession is important. But you seem to have forgotten who paid for the chair you are sitting on, the wine you are drinking, and the very roof over your head. You think Dante is the king? You are about to find out what happens when the queen decides to burn the kingdom down. I released her wrist, and she recoiled, rubbing the spot as if I had burned her. Her eyes darted to the hallway behind me, looking for backup. Dante! She screeched, her voice cracking. Get out here! Your ex-wife is harassing me! The bedroom door slammed open, but it wasn't Dante who emerged first. It was Chantal, and she was wearing my diamonds. Chantal emerged from the master suite like she was walking a runway. She had draped herself in my clothes, but it was the jewelry that made my blood run cold. Around her neck rested a double strand of Akoya pearls. They were not just expensive. They were the last thing my grandmother gave me before she passed. They were sacred. And this woman was treating them like costume jewelry from a mall kiosk. Dante followed her out, buttoning his shirt, his face flushed with adrenaline and liquor. He smirked when he saw me, expecting me to crumble at the sight of them together. Chantal fingered the pearls, tauntingly turning side to side to catch the light. Dante said I could pick out whatever I wanted, she purred. I think these look better on me anyway. You are a little too vintage for them. I did not say a word. I did not scream. I simply moved. The distance between us closed in 2 strides. Chantal's eyes widened, but she was too slow. My hand shot out and wrapped around the strands. I did not try to unclasp them. I yanked. The sound of the silk thread snapping was sharp and satisfying, like a bone breaking. Hundreds of pearls cascaded onto the marble floor, bouncing and rolling in every direction. Chantal shrieked, clutching her red neck, stepping back in shock. Fake things do not suit you, sweetie, I said, my voice dead calm. Stick to plastic, Dante roared. He lunged at me, his hand raised high, a fist ready to strike. You crazy witch, do not touch her. He was big, he was angry, and for a second he truly intended to hurt me. But I did not flinch. I did not step back. I tilted my chin up and locked eyes with him. I channeled every ounce of authority I used to crush hostile takeovers and negotiate with sharks. My eyes bored into his, daring him to cross that line. Do it, Dante, I whispered. Hit me. Give me the assault charge I need to put you away for 5 years instead of 3. I promise you if that hand lands, you will never see the outside of a prison again. He's afraid. He looked at the security camera blinking in the corner of the foyer, which he had forgotten about. The realization hit him. He was not the predator here. He lowered his hands slowly, his chest heaving. You are insane, he spat, but he backed away, moving to shield Chantal, who was now crying over the scattered pearls. You have no right to be here. I sold this place. Get out before I call the cops. I smoothed my blazer, watching him retreat. He was a coward. He always had been. He could steal my money and sleep in my bed, but he could not look me in the eye when the chips were down. Call them, I said, turning my back on him to examine a painting on the wall. I would love to have a chat with law enforcement. Dante did not hesitate. He pulled out his phone and dialed 911, his eyes never leaving mine. He put it on speaker so I could hear him reporting a break-in. He used words like intruder and hostile and violent. He was performing. He was trying to direct a scene where he was the victim and I was the unhinged aggressor. 10 minutes later, two uniformed officers from the Atlanta Police Department stepped out of the elevator. I recognized Officer Miller immediately. I had donated to the precinct's benevolent fund for the last 3 years. He blinked when he saw me standing amidst the scattered pearls and half-packed boxes, but his training kicked in and his face went neutral. What seems to be the problem here, folks? Miller asked, his hand resting casually on his belt. Dante stepped forward, thrusting a sheaf of papers toward the officer. This woman is trespassing, officer. She is my ex-wife. I sold this apartment today. The deal is closed. The money is in the bank. She has no legal right to be on this property. She broke in using some kind of hacked keycard. I want her removed immediately. Miller looked at the papers, then at me. Mrs. Williams, is this true? I did not answer him directly. Instead, I looked at the document Dante was waving. It was a power of attorney. I leaned in to get a better look. It was dated 3 years ago. The signature at the bottom, scrawled in blue ink, looked vaguely like mine, but lacked the specific flourish I use for legal documents. It was a forgery, a clumsy, desperate felony-level forgery. Dante tapped the paper aggressively. See? General power of attorney. She gave me full rights to manage and liquidate marital assets. I exercised that right. The house is sold. She is trespassing. Get her out. Miller looked uncomfortable. He was looking at a legal document that appeared valid on the surface and a deed of sale. It was a mess. Domestic disputes involving property rights were a nightmare for patrol officers. They usually defaulted to separating the parties. Ma'am, if the house is sold, Miller began, his voice apologetic. I stepped closer to Miller, lowering my voice so only he could hear. The air between us was tense. Officer Miller, I know what this looks like. That document is fraudulent. But if we arrest him for forgery tonight, I spend the next 6 hours giving statements, and this building turns into a circus. I am tired. I just flew in from Chicago. I glanced over at Dante, who was smirking, thinking he had won. Let him think he won tonight. Let him have his little victory. It is a civil matter for now, right? I will stay in the guest suite. I have residency here. You cannot kick me out without an eviction notice, and you know it. Miller looked at me, then at the smirking Dante, then back at the fake signature. He understood. He nodded imperceptibly. All right, Miller announced, turning back to the room. Mr. Williams, you cannot evict a resident without a court order regardless of the sale status, especially since she has established residency. However, Mrs. Williams has agreed to stay in the guest quarters for the night to keep the peace. If I have to come back here, someone is going to jail. Are we clear? Dante looked like he had swallowed a lemon, but he realized this was the best he was going to get. He grabbed Chantal's hand and pulled her toward the master bedroom. Fine, he spat. But stay out of my way. This is my house now. I watched them slam the door. I picked up my bag and walked to the guest room. It was small and dusty, but it had a lock. I closed the door and turned the deadbolt. Dante thought he had checkmated me. He did not realize he had just handed me the evidence that would bury him. I pulled out my phone and took a photo of the door. The game was on. The guest room walls were thin, thinner than I remembered. Or maybe Dante and Chantal were just being performatively loud to ensure I heard every moment of their victory lap. Every giggle, every creak of the bed springs vibrated through the floorboards like a taunt. They were celebrating. They were toasting to their future in the king-sized bed I had selected for its lumbar support. They thought I was curled up in a ball weeping into a dusty pillow. They thought I was broken. I lay on top of the covers fully dressed staring at the ceiling. I did not shed a tear. I did not feel the crushing weight of heartbreak. What I felt was the cold hum of a machine powering up. My mind was not dwelling on the past 5 years of marriage. It was dissecting the last 11 hours of strategy. Dante was a man who played checkers. He jumped pieces, he made noise, he claimed kings. I was playing three-dimensional chess, and he did not even know the board existed. I sat up and swung my legs over the edge of the bed. Sleep was for people who did not have an empire to defend. I reached into my tote bag and pulled out my laptop. The aluminum was cold under my fingertips. I opened it, and the screen flared to life, casting a spectral blue glow across the small room. The fan whirred softly, masking the sounds coming from the master suite. I logged into the secure server. Two-factor authentication. Retinal scan. The interface loaded a black background with gold text. Phoenix Holdings. I navigated to the real estate portfolio. There it was at the top of the list. Pending transactions. The address was familiar. It was the address I was currently sitting in. The purchase price was laughable, $500,000. A cash offer for a property appraised at $2.5 million. Dante had been so desperate for quick liquidity, so eager to hide the assets from me, that he had accepted the first lowball all-cash offer that came across his desk. He thought he was selling to a faceless hedge fund. He thought he was being shrewd. I clicked on the file labeled Ownership Structure. The organizational chart unfurled like a spider web. Phoenix Holdings was a shell company registered in Delaware. Its parent company was a trust in the Cayman Islands. And the sole beneficiary of that trust, the only person with signature authority, the true owner of Phoenix Holdings was me, Simone Williams. Simone. I ran my finger over my name on the screen. Dante had not sold our home to a stranger. He had sold it to me. He had forged my signature to sell my own asset back to me at a fraction of its value. He had essentially laundered his own crime and handed me the receipt. I checked the banking portal. The wire transfer of $500,000 that I had authorized earlier from the Phoenix account was sitting in the escrow account. It showed as sent on Dante's end, so he thought he was rich. But on my end, I had flagged the transaction for internal compliance review. The money was in limbo. He could see it, but he could not touch it. I looked at the digital clock on the bedside table. 3 in the morning, the witching hour, the time when secrets usually come out to play. I typed a quick email to my legal team. Subject line, execution of deed, body text, proceed with filing. I attached the digital footprint of Dante's login from the fake real estate listing site he used. He left digital fingerprints everywhere. He was sloppy. He was arrogant. I leaned back in the creaky guest chair and listened to the silence that had finally fallen over the apartment. They were asleep now, dreaming of yachts and designer clothes. I took a sip of the bottle of water I had brought with me. Let them sleep. Let them enjoy their one night of triumph. Tomorrow I would introduce them to the landlord. And she was not happy about the noise complaint. I closed the laptop, but I didn't turn it off. The little green light pulsed in the dark like a heartbeat. My heartbeat was steady, slow, rhythmic. I wasn't the victim here. I was the architect. I pulled the duvet up to my chin and closed my eyes. For the first time all day I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of the person holding the detonator waiting for the countdown to hit 0. The morning sun did not cleanse the penthouse of the previous night's toxicity. It only highlighted the grease stains on the rug and the empty wine bottles on the counter. I was sitting at the kitchen island drinking black coffee from a mug I had washed 3 times when the front door chimed. I did not need to look at the security feed to know who it was. The reinforcements had arrived. Dante opened the door, and in walked his younger brother Terence, followed closely by Terence's wife Becky. Terence looked sheepish, avoiding my gaze as he shuffled in wearing a faded tracksuit. He was a man who had never held a job for longer than 6 months, always waiting for Dante to hand him a scrap from the table. But it was Becky who drew my attention. She breezed in wearing designer athleisure that cost more than Terence made in a year. Carrying a tray of store-bought muffins like this was a casual brunch instead of a hostile takeover. Becky stopped when she saw me. She did not look surprised. She looked pitying. It was a look I knew well. It was the look she reserved for charity cases and people she considered beneath her. She set the muffins down on the counter right next to my elbow, invading my personal space with practiced ease. "Oh, Simone," she sighed, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "You are still here. That must be so awkward for you. We came to help Dante pack up the last of the clutter. You know how men are with organization." She picked up a crystal vase from the counter. It was a piece I had bought in Prague. She turned it over in her hands, carelessly checking the brand stamp before setting it down, a little too hard. "Look, I know this is hard for you," she continued, leaning in as if sharing a secret. "But honestly, honey, we all saw this coming. You have always been so intense. I know that in your culture, women are raised to be strong. You have to be these independent warriors who do not need anyone. It is admirable, really. But it is also very intimidating for a man like Dante." She paused, waiting for me to react. When I simply took a sip of my coffee, she pressed on her smile, tightening at the corners. "Men need to feel needed, Simone. They do not want a boss at home. They want a wife. Maybe if you had been a little softer, a little less aggressive about your career, he would not have looked elsewhere. You should really learn to let things go gracefully, like I do. When Terence makes a mistake, I forgive him. I nurture him. I do not hold it over his head or threaten him with lawyers. That is what a real marriage is." I set my mug down. The sound echoed in the silent kitchen. Becky thought she was giving me advice. She thought she was the superior woman in the room because her husband had not left her yet. She did not realize that the only reason Terence stayed was because he could not afford to leave, and the only reason they had a roof over their heads was because I paid for it. Gracefully, I repeated, testing the word. "You think I should let my husband steal my home and humiliate me publicly, and I should just smile and wave goodbye? Is that what you would do, Becky? If Terence sold your house out from under you, would you be graceful?" Becky laughed, a tinkling sound that grated on my nerves. "Terence would never do that. He adores me. Besides, we are a team. We do not keep secrets." I looked at Terence, who was currently trying to shove my espresso machine into a cardboard box. He flinched when he felt my eyes on him. He knew. He knew exactly whose money paid his mortgage. He knew about the gambling debts I had wiped clean for him 2 years ago, so Becky would not find out. "You are right, Becky," I said, my voice smooth and cold. "You are a team, and I am sure you know everything there is to know about your husband's finances. After all, a smart woman like you would never let a man handle the money without checking the receipts." Becky's smile faltered. She sensed the threat, but she could not identify it yet. She smoothed her ponytail and turned away, dismissing me. "Well, I am just trying to help you transition to your new life," she said over her shoulder. "Grab a trash bag, Terence. Let us get this over with." I watched her walk away, confident in her ignorance. She wanted me to be graceful. I would be. I would destroy her life with the elegance of a ballerina, and she would not even see the blade until she was bleeding. I walked into the master bedroom expecting to find them packing Dante's things. Instead, I found a desecration of my career. The walk-in closet was open and the floor was covered in heavy-duty black trash bags. Becky was holding open the mouth of a bag while Chantal raided my side of the wardrobe. She was pulling out my suits, my Armani, my vintage Chanel, the custom-tailored blazers I had worn to close deals that bought this very penthouse. She was bunching them up in her fists like they were dirty laundry and stuffing them into the plastic sacks. I stood in the doorway watching them for a moment. They were laughing. It was a high, mean-spirited sound that bounced off the marble floors. "Ugh, look at this one," Becky said, wrinkling her nose at a charcoal gray wool blazer. "It is so stiff. Who even wears this stuff anymore? It smells like a boardroom and depression." Chantal giggled, tossing a silk blouse in after it. "I know, right? It is all so old lady. Dante likes me in color. He likes me in things that actually show off a body. We need to clear all this stiff corporate junk out to make room for my summer collection. Out with the old, in with the new." She grabbed a hanger holding a limited edition trench coat I had bought in London. She went to shove it into the bag, but I cleared my throat. The sound was sharp enough to cut glass. They both jumped. Chantal dropped the coat. Becky straightened up, smoothing her athleisure wear, trying to look helpful instead of malicious. "Oh, hey, Simone," Becky said, her voice pitching up an octave. "We were just helping Dante declutter. He said he wanted a fresh start for the space. We figured you would not want to drag all these old heavy clothes with you to wherever you are going. You know, travel light." I looked at the trash bags. There was easily $50,000 worth of high-end fashion currently sitting in garbage sacks. They thought they were hurting me. They thought that by treating my armor like trash, they were stripping me of my power. They did not understand that clothes do not make the woman. The woman makes the clothes. I did not scream. I did not dive for the bags. I pulled my phone from my pocket and dialed a number I had on speed dial. "The director of Dress for Success, Atlanta." "Put the bag down, Becky," I said, my voice conversational. She hesitated. "We are just throwing it out, Simone. It is trash." I held up a finger, silencing her as the line connected. "Hello, Sarah. It is Simone Williams. Yes, I am doing well. Listen, I am doing a complete wardrobe overhaul today. I have about 10 bags of designer business wear. Mint condition, sizes 4 and 6. Yes, the Chanel too. Can you send a truck? I need it gone within the hour." I paused, watching Chantal's face twist in confusion. "And Sarah, do me a favor. Put the donation receipt in the name of Chantal Davis, Chantal. Yes. She is an aspiring model and she really needs the tax write-off this year. She has not had much work lately." I hung up the phone and smiled at them, a genuine, terrifying smile. "Thank you, ladies. I have been meaning to clear out last season's wardrobe for months, but I just have been too busy making money to deal with it. You two saved me the trouble of hiring a stylist to purge the closet." I stepped over the pile of clothes on the floor and picked up the trench coat Chantal had dropped. I dusted it off and draped it over my arm. "The truck will be here in 20 minutes. Make sure you pack everything. I plan on buying a whole new wardrobe in Paris next week anyway." Chantal looked furious. She had wanted a reaction. She had wanted me to fight for my old things. Instead, I had treated my most expensive possessions like they were nothing more than tissues. I had turned her act of vandalism into my act of charity, and I had put her name on it, just to remind her that she was nothing more than a tax write-off in my ledger. Chantal glared at me. "You think you are so better than everyone." "No, sweetie," I said, walking out. "I do not think. I know. And Becky, do not forget to tie those bags tight. We would not want the donations to get dusty." The smell of frying bacon and expensive cologne filled the kitchen. My kitchen. I walked in to find a scene that looked like a distorted Norman Rockwell painting. Dante sat at the head of the island holding court. Loretta was to his right, piling eggs onto a plate that cost $300. Terrence and Becky were huddled over fruit bowls, and Chantal was perched on Dante's lap feeding him a strawberry. They looked like a family that had erased me from the picture while sitting on my furniture. No one offered me a seat. No one offered me a plate. In fact, when Loretta saw me standing by the espresso machine, she tapped her empty mug against the granite counter. "We are out of coffee, Simone," she said, not even looking at me. "Make a fresh pot, and do not burn it this time." I stared at her for a beat. She really thought I was the help. I did not argue. I did not throw the pot. I simply started the machine. I needed the caffeine for the math I was doing in my head. So Dante, tell them about the deal, Chantal chirped, licking sugar off her thumb. Tell them how you bossed that negotiation. Dante leaned back, grinning like a shark who just found a wounded seal. It was brilliant, he said, his voice booming. I found this private equity firm, Phoenix Holdings. They wanted a fast close. No inspections, no appraisals, just cash on the barrelhead. I told them 500,000, take it or leave it. They wired the money this morning. Boom. Done. Becky gasped, her eyes widening. $500,000. In cash. Dante, you are a genius. Terrence nodded eagerly, his mouth full of toast. That is a lot of liquidity, bro. You really cashed out. Dante winked at me. I wanted to liquidate the asset fast, before the lawyers get involved and try to freeze everything. I figure 500 grand is enough to set us up in Miami for a year while I get the development business running. And the best part is the ex-wife does not get a dime because the money is already offshore. I took a slow sip of my black coffee. It was hot and bitter, just the way I liked it. I leaned against the counter, watching them celebrate their own destruction. Dante was so proud of himself. He thought he was hiding assets. He thought he was winning. What he did not know was that our penthouse in this specific zip code with these specific custom finishes was appraised last week at $2.5 million. By selling it for $500,000, he had just undersold the asset by 80%. And since I was the sole owner of Phoenix Holdings, he had essentially just gifted me $2 million in equity. He was not a genius. He was a man so blinded by greed and the desire to hurt me that he had set fire to his own fortune just to singe my eyebrows. I watched him kiss Chantal on the forehead. I watched Loretta shovel more bacon into her mouth, celebrating her son's business acumen. They were feasting on a corpse, not realizing they were the ones in the grave. That sounds like a very aggressive strategy, Dante. I said, my voice smooth and devoid of sarcasm. Fast cash is always appealing. He sneered at me. Do not be jealous, Simone. You never understood real estate. You just understand spreadsheets. That is why you are still working for a salary, and I am making deals. I smiled over the rim of my mug. You are right, Dante. I do love a good spreadsheet, especially the ones where the return on investment is 400% overnight. Enjoy your breakfast. You are going to need the energy. I stood at the sink, rinsing out the mug I had used to toast their stupidity. The kitchen was finally quiet, but I knew I was not alone. I could feel eyes burning into my back. I turned slowly to find Terrence hovering near the refrigerator. He looked nervous, shifting his weight from foot to foot like a teenager about to ask for the keys to the car. He waited until Becky and Dante were out of earshot on the balcony before he made his move. He sidled up to the island, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Hey, Simone. Look, I know things are weird right now. It is a lot of drama. But I wanted to ask about the monthly transfer. It is the first of the month tomorrow, and you know the lease on the Range Rover is due. Plus, Becky wants to put a deposit down for that vacation in Cabo. I stared at him. The audacity was almost impressive. His brother had just served me divorce papers and tried to kick me out on the street, and Terrence was standing here asking for his allowance like nothing had changed. He truly believed I was just an unending stream of revenue. I dried my hands on a tea towel, taking my time. Terrence smiled weakly, hoping his usual charm would work. Terrence, I said, my voice flat. I think you are confused about how divorces work. When I divorce your brother, I divorce the entire family payroll. His smile vanished. But Simone, come on. You know Dante. He is tight with money. He said his cash is tied up in offshore accounts for tax reasons. He told me to come to you one last time before the accounts get frozen. He said you would do it for old time's sake. I laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound. Of course Dante sent him. Dante wanted to bleed me dry one last time while hoarding his own pile of stolen cash. Your brother just sold this apartment for $500,000 in cash, Terrence. He is sitting on a mountain of liquidity. If he is not sharing it with you, that sounds like a personal problem between brothers. Go ask him. Tell him you want a dividend from the family business. Terrence looked terrified. He knew Dante better than anyone. He knew Dante would not give him a dime. Dante was selfish to his core. I was the one who had covered Terrence's gambling debts. I was the one who paid for his car. Without me, he was nothing but a man with expensive tastes and zero income. But Simone, he whined. The Bank of Simone is closed, Terrence. Permanently. Get a job. I walked past him, bumping his shoulder. Becky was standing in the doorway, her arms crossed over her chest. She had heard everything. Her eyes were not filled with shame for her husband's begging. They were filled with venom. She realized in that moment that her free ride was over. She watched her husband crumble, and instead of comforting him, she turned her gaze to Dante on the balcony. She marched over to him, whispering furiously in his ear, pointing back at me. She was not de-escalating. She was pouring gasoline on the fire, demanding that he hurt me enough to make me pay up. I sat at the dining room table, surrounded by the chaos of their packing. My laptop was open. I was monitoring the Phoenix Holdings escrow account, ensuring Dante's funds remained frozen in digital purgatory. The screen was filled with spreadsheets and legal notices that would soon dismantle their lives. Becky circled the table like a shark in Lululemon. She held a tall glass of orange juice in her hand. She did not trip. She did not stumble. She simply stopped behind my chair and tilted her wrist. The sticky orange liquid cascaded over the keyboard. It splashed onto the trackpad and seeped into the vents. The screen flickered violently, distorted with static, and then went black. The smell of citrus and frying electronics filled the air. Becky gasped, a theatrical sound that belonged in a bad soap opera. "Oh my God, Simone." My hand just slipped. "It is so humid in here with all the boxes. I guess I just lost my grip." She did not reach for a towel. She did not apologize. She just smiled, a tight little smirk that did not reach her eyes. "But hey," she continued, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "You are the big corporate boss, right? You can probably buy a new one before lunch. What is $3,000 to someone like you? It is just pocket change, right?" I looked at the ruined machine. Then I looked at her. She wanted me to cry over a piece of hardware. She wanted to see me flustered. She wanted to prove that she could touch me. I reached for a napkin and calmly dabbed a drop of juice from the table. I did not try to save the computer. It was dead. "It is fine, Becky," I said, my voice devoid of anger. "That is why we have the cloud. Everything on that drive was backed up 10 seconds ago. The hardware is just plastic and metal. It is replaceable, unlike a reputation." Her smile faltered. She hated that money meant nothing to me when it meant everything to her. She hated that I was not scrambling. I pulled my phone from my pocket and tapped the screen a few times. "Actually, since we are talking about finances and broken things, I just got an interesting notification." I turned the phone around so she could see the screen. It was an alert from the private bank that held the mortgage on the suburban McMansion she and Terrence lived in. The house that was technically owned by a subsidiary of my company as a tax shelter for Dante. "It says here that the automatic mortgage payment for your house was declined this morning," I said, reading the text aloud. "Insufficient funds in the source account." "That is strange. Usually the auto draft comes from Dante's business account, the one I stopped funding yesterday." Becky's face went the color of ash. The empty glass shook in her hand. "That is impossible," she stammered. "Terrence takes care of the bills. We are fine. He is a director. He is a figurehead." "Becky," I corrected her, "and foreclosure proceedings in Georgia are very fast. If that payment is not made by 5 p.m. today, the bank sends a notice of default. And since I am the guarantor on that loan, I am telling you right now I will not be covering it." I stood up and dropped the wet napkin into her empty hand. "You might want to go check under your couch cushions for loose change. You are going to need about $4,000 by this afternoon. Maybe you can sell some of those muffins you brought. Enjoy your morning. I have a new laptop to buy." I sat in the corner of the living room on a high-back velvet chair that Chantal had not yet managed to stain with self-tanner. My replacement laptop had not arrived yet, so I was working off my tablet managing the acquisition of a failing tech startup in Silicon Valley, while my husband's mistress performed for an invisible audience. Chantal was pacing the room, phone held high, her face bathed in the artificial glow of a ring light she had clipped to the device. She was live streaming again. "Hey guys, welcome back to my channel." She chirped, her voice an octave higher than normal. "I am doing a full house tour today. Look at these views. Look at this marble. It is all mine now." Dante really outdid himself. "We are going to redecorate everything, of course. Get rid of all this heavy dark energy." She spun around the room, the camera capturing the chaos of the moving boxes and the general disarray. She stopped when the lens landed on me. I did not look up from my tablet. I was reviewing a clause in a non-disclosure agreement that was worth more than Chantal's entire life earnings. "And look who is still here," she whispered loudly, leaning into the microphone. "It is the ex. She is just sitting there like a statue. It is so sad, honestly. She has nowhere to go. Dante says she is obsessed with him. She just cannot let go." Can you imagine being that old and desperate? "She is 34, guys. That is ancient." She walked closer to me, emboldened by the hearts and emojis floating up her screen. She thrust the phone right into my face. "Say hi to the fans, Simone," she taunted. "Tell them how it feels to be replaced by a younger model. Tell them how it feels to lose everything while I get the keys to the castle." I paused my scrolling. I slowly raised my eyes from the screen. I did not blink. I did not look away. I looked directly into the camera lens, staring down the thousands of strangers watching this train wreck. I adjusted my silk blouse. I fixed my posture. I looked every inch the CEO that I was. "Adieu les idiots," I said. My voice was low, smooth, and perfectly enunciated. Chantal blinked. She pulled the phone back slightly, confusion crinkling her forehead. "What was that?" she asked, laughing nervously. "Was that Spanish?" "See, guys, she is speaking in tongues. She has totally lost it." But her eyes darted to the chat stream. It was moving so fast it was a blur. I watched as her expression shifted from smugness to horror. One comment popped up. "That is French, you moron." Another followed. "She just called you an idiot." Then another. "Wait, is that Simone Williams, the crisis management genius? She is a legend." And another. "Why does the ex look like a queen and you look like a messy teenager?" Team Simone. The tide turned in seconds. Chantal was no longer the star of her own show. She was the jester. Her followers were not laughing at me. They were laughing at her. They were commenting on her cheap extensions and her lack of class compared to the woman sitting calmly in the chair. Chantal scrambled to end the stream, her fingers fumbling with the screen. She was red-faced and breathing hard. "What did you do?" she shrieked. "You ruined my engagement." I went back to my tablet, swiping to the next page of the contract. "I did nothing." "Chantal," I said without looking up. "I simply said goodbye. You are the one who invited the world to watch you fail. Maybe next time you should check the comments before you try to humiliate someone who builds brands for a living. Now, if you do not mind, I have a company to buy." I was sitting in the library of the penthouse, enjoying the silence that had finally settled over the apartment. The morning sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. My laptop was open, but my attention was focused on my phone. I was waiting for a specific notification, and right on cue, it arrived. The screen lit up with a fraud alert from American Express. "Transaction declined. Location Hermes at Buckhead Village. Amount $12,500. I let out a soft laugh. $12,000. Dante was trying to buy a Birkin bag. He was trying to buy Chantal's affection with my credit limit. The audacity was breathtaking. He had just bragged about having $500,000 in cash, yet his instinct was still to reach into my pocket. Old habits die hard, especially when you are a parasite. The phone began to ring immediately after the notification. The caller ID flashed hubby with a heart emoji I hadn't bothered to change yet. I let it ring 3 times, letting his panic marinate. Then I answered, pressing the speakerphone button and setting the device on the marble coffee table. "What the hell did you do, Simone?" Dante's voice filled the room, distorted by rage and poor cell reception. I could hear the distinct ambient noise of a high-end retail store in the background. The low hum of expensive air conditioning, the murmur of polite conversation, and the sharp click of heels on polished floors. "Hello to you too, Dante," I replied, pouring myself another cup of tea. "To what do I owe the pleasure of this screaming fit?" "Do not play games with me," he hissed. I am standing at the counter at Hermes. The card was declined. The black card, Simone. The one with the unlimited limit. The sales associate is looking at me like I am a criminal. "Fix it. Call the bank and authorize the charge right now." I could hear Chantal whimpering in the background. "But babe, you promised. You said I could get the orange one." I leaned back in my chair, crossing my legs. "I cannot do that, Dante," I said, my voice loud enough for whoever was standing near him to hear. "You see, I canceled that card this morning. It is a supplementary card on my account. And since we are getting divorced, I figured you would not need my financial support anymore." There was a moment of silence on the line, then an explosion of noise. "You did what?" "You cannot cancel my card. That is financial abuse. I need to pay for this bag." "Chantal is waiting. People are staring at me, Simone." I smiled at the ceiling. "But Dante, honey," I said, dropping my voice to a mockingly sweet register. "Why are you using my card at all? You just sold the penthouse, remember? You told everyone at breakfast that you closed a cash deal for $500,000. You are rich, Dante. You are a big-time real estate mogul now. Why are you trying to buy luxury goods with your ex-wife's money?" I heard a gasp in the background. Probably the sales associate realizing that the man in the designer suit was a fraud. "Use your own money, Dante," I continued. "Use that liquidity you were bragging about. Or did you forget that you cannot touch it yet?" "Shut up!" he snarled, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Just authorize the card. I will pay you back. I swear." I laughed, a cold, hard sound. "Pay me back? With what? The money you stole from me?" "No, Dante. The Bank of Simone is closed. Permanently. You wanted to be the big man. You wanted to be the provider for your new family. So provide. Pull out your own wallet. Put down your own card. Oh wait, you do not have one, do you? Because your credit score is in the sub-basements without me." "Simone, please do not do this here." He begged, his arrogance finally cracking. "I am not doing anything I said. You are the one trying to spend money you do not have. Man up, Dante. If you cannot afford the bag, put it back. It is embarrassing." I hung up the phone. I did not need to see his face to know it was the same shade of red as the declined transaction alert. I took a sip of tea. It tasted like justice. The door to the guest suite banged open without a knock. Loretta stormed in like she was leading a raid. She did not look at me. She went straight to the dresser, pulling out drawers and dumping my folded clothes onto the floor. She was frantic, tossing silk scarves and cashmere sweaters aside as if they were rags. "Where is it?" she demanded, her voice shrill and tight. "Where did you hide it?" I watched her for a moment. She looked ridiculous, digging through my personal belongings with the desperation of an addict. "If you are looking for your dignity, Loretta," I said, calm as the surface of a frozen lake, "you lost that about 30 years ago." She spun around, her face flushed a blotchy red. "Do not get smart with me. I want the jewelry set, the gold necklace and the earrings I gave you at your rehearsal dinner. The family heirlooms." I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing. Heirlooms. She called them heirlooms. The set she was talking about was gold-plated brass with cubic zirconia stones. She had made a huge production of presenting it to me 10 years ago in front of her church friends, claiming it had belonged to her great-grandmother. I had found the receipt in her purse the next day. It was from a discount kiosk at the mall. $19.99 on clearance. "You want the jewelry?" I asked. "Why? Did you run out of wine money?" It is for Chantal, she declared, puffing out her chest. She is going to be the mother of my grandchildren. She deserves to wear the family legacy, not some barren career woman who does not appreciate tradition. Give it to me. She truly believed her own lies. She honestly thought that cheap tarnished metal was a royal crown. She wanted to strip me of everything, even the garbage. I pointed a manicured finger toward the corner of the room. There sat a small metal wastebasket. You might want to check in there, I said. Loretta froze. She looked at the trash can, then back at me. What do you mean? I threw it out, I said, shrugging. Yesterday. When I was unpacking my things, it was turning green, Loretta. The plating was flaking off. It was staining my silk blouses. I figured since we are getting divorced, I did not need to hold on to cheap costume jewelry anymore. You threw it in the trash, she whispered, her voice trembling with rage. You threw my family heritage in the garbage. It is not heritage, Loretta. It is plated nickel from the mall, I corrected her. But, if you want it that badly, be my guest. I think I threw a half-eaten apple in there too, so you might want to wash it off before you put it on Chantal. Although considering she is wearing my old clothes anyway, a little garbage juice fits her aesthetic. Loretta let out a sound that was half scream, half sob. She rushed to the trash can and fell to her knees, digging through the refuse. She pulled out the tangled necklace, holding it up like a dead snake. Coffee grounds coated the fake diamonds. You are evil, she wailed, clutching the sticky jewelry to her chest. You have no soul. God will punish you for this. Maybe, I said, turning back to my laptop. But right now it looks like he is punishing you. Close the door on your way out, Loretta. The smell of trash is ruining my focus. She scrambled up and ran out of the room, howling Dante's name, leaving a trail of coffee grounds on the carpet. I did not watch her go. I just typed another email to the building manager. Subject line: pest control. I waited until the penthouse was silent before making my move. The kitchen island was cluttered with their takeout boxes and half-empty liquor bottles, but I cleared a small empty space right next to Dante's car keys. I placed the manila folder there with surgical precision. The label on the front was printed in bold black letters that were impossible to ignore. It read, Marriage Reconciliation Proposal and Asset Transfer Schedule. Inside were 20 pages of legal gibberish that I had drafted in 10 minutes, mixed with real-looking financial statements showing millions in liquid assets. It was the perfect bait for a man whose greed was only eclipsed by his ego. I retreated to the shadows of the hallway and left the door cracked just enough to see. Dante walked in 10 minutes later, still fuming about the declined credit card at Hermes. He was muttering to himself, grabbing a bottle of water from the fridge. He reached for his keys, and then he froze. His eyes locked onto the folder. He looked around the empty kitchen, scanning for me. When he was sure he was alone, he snatched the folder up. I watched as he opened it. I saw his eyes widen as he scanned the first page. I had planted a clause in the first paragraph offering a $2 million transfer to a joint trust as a gesture of good faith to repair the marriage. It was exactly the kind of desperate, pathetic move he wanted me to make. It validated every delusion he had about his own worth. A slow grin spread across his face. It was predatory and ugly. Ma, he called out, his voice trembling with excitement. Ma, get in here. You are not going to believe this. Loretta shuffled in, wearing her bathrobe, still clutching her rosary beads, like they would absolve her of her gluttony. What is it, Dante? Is she causing trouble again? Look at this, he said, thrusting the folder under her nose. She is trying to buy me back. She drafted a reconciliation agreement. She wants to transfer $2 million to me, Ma. She says she wants to prove her loyalty. Loretta snatched the papers, her eyes scanning the dollar signs. She let out a cackle that sounded like dry leaves crunching. I knew it. I told you, Dante. These career women act tough, but they are terrified of being alone. She knows she cannot find another man like you. She is desperate. She is willing to pay just to keep you. Dante puffed out his chest, his arrogance inflating instantly. She thinks she can buy my love. She thinks money fixes everything. Well, she is right about one thing. I am expensive. He slapped the folder closed and looked at his mother with a gleam in his eye. You know what, Ma? We are going to have that party tomorrow night. The big one. I was going to keep it small, but now I want everyone there. I want the investors. I want the club promoters. I want the whole Atlanta scene. Loretta nodded vigorously. Yes, baby. Show them who is boss. I am going to let her think she has a chance, Dante said, pacing the kitchen. I will let her watch me shine. I will let her see Chantal wearing her jewelry. And then right when she thinks I am going to sign this reconciliation paper, I am going to announce the divorce to the whole room. I will take the papers as a trophy and kick her out in front of everyone. It will be legendary. He tucked the fake folder under his arm like it was the deed to the city. He thought he was holding his golden parachute. He did not know he was holding a brick of C4, and he had just lit the fuse. I closed the bedroom door silently. Go ahead, Dante. Invite the world. I want a full audience for what happens when the clock strikes 12. I left the penthouse not out of defeat, but out of necessity. I needed a secure line and an environment free from the stench of betrayal. I drove my matte black sedan to a nondescript office building in the financial district. To the outside world, it looked like just another boring corporate structure housing accountants and actuaries. To me, it was the fortress where I kept my real life. I bypassed the main lobby and took the private elevator from the underground garage. It required a retinal scan and a voice print to even open the doors. When they slid apart on the 45th floor, the silence was absolute. This was my war room. It was a space of chrome and glass, chilled to a precise 68 degrees, lined with servers that hummed with the quiet power of information. Waiting for me at the long glass conference table were two men who knew the real Simone. Julian, my attorney, who charged $1,000 an hour and was worth every penny, and Silas, my private investigator who could find a needle in a haystack in the dark. They both stood as I entered, buttoning their jackets out of respect. They knew I wasn't just a scorned wife. They knew I was the invisible hand that moved half the capital in this city. I did not waste time with pleasantries. I walked to the massive wall-mounted screen at the head of the room. Show me the map, I commanded. Silas tapped his tablet and the screen flared to life. A digital map of Atlanta appeared. It was covered in glowing gold dots. Each dot represented a property, a commercial lease, or a development project owned by Phoenix Holdings. Dante thought he was the big shot because his name was on the deed of one penthouse. He had no idea that I owned the building that penthouse sat on. I owned the luxury mall where he tried to use my credit card. I owned the boutique hotel where he took Chantal for their weekend trysts. I even owned the note on the mortgage for the gym where he pretended to work out. I stood before the glowing map, tracing the lines of my empire. I was not just an investor, I was the landlord of his entire existence. Report, I said, turning to Julian. Julian slid a thick black binder across the polished glass. We have everything, Simone. The forensic accounting on Dante's shell companies is complete. He has been laundering money from your joint accounts into a failing crypto scheme for 2 years. It is sloppy work. We have the IP addresses, the transfer logs, and the fake invoices. I opened the binder. It was an autopsy of a marriage written in numbers. And the signature Silas asked, nodding at the screen where a blown-up image of the sale document was displayed. I looked at the forgery Dante had used to sell my home. Confirmed, Julian said. We had a handwriting expert verify it an hour ago. It is a cut-and-paste job from your wedding license. He literally traced your signature from the day you promised to love him forever and used it to rob you. It is poetic in a twisted way. I closed the binder with a snap that echoed through the room. It is not poetic, Julian. It is a felony. I looked back at the map of the city. Dante wanted a show. He wanted a grand finale. He wanted to parade his new life in front of the city's elite. Is the acquisition of the venue for tomorrow night complete? I asked. Silas grinned a wolfish expression that matched my own mood. Closed 10 minutes ago. You now own the event space where he plans to throw his freedom party. You control the lights, the sound, and the security. Perfect, I said, walking to the window to look down at the city lights. Dante thinks he is throwing a party to celebrate his new life. He does not realize he is throwing a retirement party for his freedom. Prepare the presentation, boys. Tomorrow night we are going to give a TED Talk on the consequences of greed. And I want the resolution to be high definition. I want every person in that room to see the sweat on his forehead when the hammer drops. Julian tapped a key on his laptop and the main screen changed. The architectural map of Atlanta was replaced by a high-resolution scan of the power of attorney document Dante had waved in the police officer's face. Next to it was a magnified image of the signature line. To the untrained eye, it looked like my handwriting. To the forensic document examiner sitting via video link from Quantico, it looked like a kindergarten art project. Dr. Vance did not mince words. He pointed a digital laser at the screen, highlighting the jagged edges of the ink strokes. Ms. Williams looked at the pixelation here and here. Ink flows into paper fibers. It bleeds slightly. This signature floats on top of the digital grain. It has no depth. This was not written with a pen. It was lifted from another high-resolution scan and pasted onto this PDF before being printed. It is a digital collage. I leaned in closer, my eyes narrowing. There was something familiar about the specific loop of the S in my name. I usually signed business documents with a sharp, quick stroke, but this signature was softer, more romantic. Then it hit me. I opened my purse and pulled out a small laminated card I kept in my wallet. It was a miniaturized copy of our marriage license. I held it up to the screen. Zoom in on the marriage certificate, I commanded. Silas adjusted the feed. The two signatures were identical, not just similar, identical. Down to the microscopic tremor in the W where my hand had shaken because I was so happy to be marrying the man I loved. He stole my happiness, I whispered, my voice turning to ice. He literally cut and pasted the promise I made to him at the altar and used it to rob me blind. Julian let out a low whistle. That is not just forgery, Simone. That is wire fraud because he transmitted the document electronically to the closing attorney. That is identity theft. And since the amount exceeds $100,000, we are looking at a federal felony. We are talking about 10 to 20 years in federal prison, not the county jail, the big house. He looked at me, his hand hovering over his phone. I can call the FBI right now, Simone. They can pick him up before he finishes his morning mimosa. We have enough to bury him today. I looked at the screen. I looked at the signature of the woman who believed in love. That woman was dead. Dante had killed her. Arresting him now would be easy. It would be quick, but it would be private. It would be a news story in the back pages. No, I said, leaning back in my chair. Not yet. Silas frowned. Why wait? He is dangerous. He is not dangerous, I corrected. He is desperate. And tomorrow night he is throwing a party. He invited every important person in Atlanta to witness his triumph. He wants an audience. I think we should give them a show they will never forget. I stood up, smoothing my skirt. Let him have one more night of freedom, Julian. Let him think he got away with it. When the handcuffs click, I want him to be wearing his best tuxedo. I want Chantal to be holding a glass of my expensive champagne. And I want everyone he tried to impress to see him for exactly what he is. A fraud. Save the evidence. We execute at the party. Silas cleared the screen of the forged signature and pulled up a new file. This one was labeled Rebecca Becky Williams. I leaned forward expecting to see more photos of her spending my money or mocking me behind my back. Instead, I saw grainy telephoto shots of Becky wearing large sunglasses and a headscarf entering a glass building in Buckhead. She looked nervous. She looked guilty. That is the office of Meyer and Holt. Silas said, tapping the screen. They are not personal shoppers, Simone. They are the most ruthless divorce attorneys in the state. They specialize in hiding assets and extracting maximum alimony. I stared at the image. Becky, the woman who had stood in my kitchen this morning lecturing me about grace and standing by your man, was secretly plotting to leave Terrence. The hypocrisy was so thick I could taste it. Silas played an audio clip recorded from a directional microphone directed at a cafe table. Becky's voice was clear, sharp, and dripping with contempt. "I cannot wait much longer, Mom," she was saying. "Terrence is useless. He is 70,000 in the hole with the bookies again. If Dante does not pay out from this house sale, I am walking away with nothing. I just need to play the supportive sister-in-law for one more week. Once Dante cuts Terrence a check, I file the papers and take half. I am done pretending to love a loser." I let out a dark laugh. So the perfect marriage was a sham. Becky was not defending Dante because she believed in family. She was defending him because he was her golden goose. She was betting on the wrong horse. She thought Dante was about to liquidate assets and share the wealth with his little brother. She did not know Dante would sooner set money on fire than give it to Terrence. And she definitely did not know that the money she was waiting for was currently sitting in my frozen escrow account. "This changes the battlefield," Julian noted. "She is a mercenary Simone. She has no loyalty to them. She is only loyal to the payout." "Exactly," I said, standing up and pacing the length of the conference room. "If she finds out the money is gone, she will not just leave Terrence. She will burn him down on her way out. She is the weak link in their little alliance." I looked at the photo of Becky's face hidden behind those oversized glasses. She was calculating. She was cold. She was just like me, but without the capital to back it up. I turned to Silas. "Does Terrence know?" Silas shook his head. "He thinks they are trying for a baby. He is looking at cribs online, while she is looking at condos for singles." "Perfect," I said. "Let us help her speed up her timeline. If we apply the right pressure, Becky will snap. And when she does, she will tear that family apart from the inside faster than any lawsuit could. I want that audio clip ready. And get me the full list of Terrence's gambling debts. I think it is time Becky received an anonymous tip about her husband's true net worth. The enemy of my enemy is my tool." Becky wanted money. I would give her the truth instead. It was going to be much more valuable in court. Julian pulled up the real-time transaction log for the account Dante was currently draining. It was mesmerizing in a horrific way. The $50,000 earnest money deposit I had allowed to clear was evaporating faster than water on hot pavement. It had been less than 2 hours since the funds hit his account, and he had already burned through half of it. I watched the screen as a new charge appeared. Atlanta Exotic Car Rentals. He was not buying the McLaren outright. He did not have the credit for that. He was putting down a massive security deposit for a long-term lease. He wanted to look like an owner without the equity. It was the story of his life. He was leasing a lifestyle he could not sustain, renting respect he had not earned. Silas tapped the screen, pointing to a GPS locator. "He is moving. He just left the dealership. He is heading north toward the lake." I checked the timestamp. He was meeting the yacht broker. Dante wasn't just renting a boat for a day. He was putting a deposit down for a season pass on a party barge. He wanted to be the king of Lake Lanier. He wanted to host parties where he could spray champagne he didn't pay for on people who didn't actually like him. He was trying to build a kingdom on a foundation of quicksand. My phone pinged again. It was a notification from Instagram. Chantal had posted a story. It was a video of Dante signing the papers at the marina. He was holding a pen with a gold flourish, signing his name with that same forged confidence he had used to sell my home. In the background, Chantal was squealing about hot girl summer and panning the camera over the white leather seats of the yacht. "Look at us," she chirped into the camera. "Started from the bottom, now we are here. No more boring vibes. We are living that CEO life." I took a sip of my water. CEO life. She thought CEO life was spending money. She did not know that real CEO life was controlling the flow of money. She did not know that the marina they were standing in was managed by a subsidiary of a logistics firm I acquired 2 years ago. I could have called the harbor master and had them thrown off the dock for trespassing. I could have had the contract voided in seconds, but I did not. I let the transaction go through. I let the payment process. I wanted him to feel the wind in his hair. I wanted him to taste the salt and the success. Because the higher he climbed, the longer the fall would be. And when he hit the bottom, I wanted him to know that every single moment of his joy had been sponsored by the woman he tried to destroy. "He is spending your money to spite you," Silas said, shaking his head. "He thinks he is hurting you by blowing this cash." "Let him spend it," I said, my voice cold. "That 50,000 is not a loss, Silas. It is an investment. Every dollar he spends is another nail in his coffin. He is creating a paper trail of financial irresponsibility that will ensure he never gets alimony. He is proving to the court that he cannot be trusted with assets. He is buying me my freedom, and he thinks he is buying a boat." I turned away from the screen. Let him have his boat. Tomorrow night he is going to need a life raft. The phone on my desk buzzed with the dedicated ringtone for the Gables at Buckhead. It was the ultra-exclusive assisted living facility where Loretta resided. It was not a nursing home. It was a 5-star resort that happened to have nurses on standby. It featured gourmet dining, a heated saline pool, and a social calendar busier than a debutante's. It cost $14,000 a month. And for the last 5 years that bill had been paid automatically from my personal account. I answered on the first ring, my voice professional and crisp. "This is Simone. Mrs. Williams, hello. It is Patricia, the accounts manager. I hope you are having a wonderful afternoon. I am calling because the annual contract for your mother-in-law's suite is up for renewal tomorrow." Loretta actually stopped by the office this morning before she went to visit her son. She requested an upgrade to the Platinum package, which includes the private driver service and the daily spa access. "Since that increases the monthly retainer to $18,000, I just needed your verbal authorization before we process the charge." I leaned back in my leather chair, swiveling to look out at the skyline. $18,000 a month. Loretta was asking for a raise while actively helping her son steal my home. She was demanding spa treatments while calling me a dry ATM. The cognitive dissonance was staggering. She truly believed that my money was a natural resource she was entitled to simply because she existed. "Patricia," I said, my tone pleasant but firm, "I am glad you called. There has been a change in the family's financial structure. I will not be authorizing the renewal. In fact, I am terminating my sponsorship of Loretta's residency effective immediately. Please remove my card from the file." There was a long, stunned silence on the other end of the line. I could hear Patricia typing frantically. I beg your pardon, Mrs. Williams. Terminating. But the lease expires at midnight. If there is no payment method on file, the system automatically flags the account for eviction. We cannot house residents without secured funding. It is strict company policy. I know the policy, Patricia. I remember signing the liability waiver. Well, is there another card? Loretta mentioned that Dante just closed a massive real estate deal. She said he is the head of the family now. Should I send the invoice to him? I smiled. It was a cold, sharp expression that no one was there to see. Yes, Patricia. That is an excellent idea. Send the invoice to Dante. Send him the bill for the Platinum package, the driver, and the spa. Send it all. He is very eager to take care of his mother. I am sure a man of his newfound wealth will have no problem writing a check for $18,000 to keep his mother off the street. But Mrs. Williams. Patricia hesitated. If the payment does not clear by 5 o'clock today, we have to issue a notice to vacate. We have a waiting list. We would have to pack her belongings. Then you should call him right away, I said. I would hate for Loretta to find her luggage on the curb because her son's credit card bounced. He is with her right now. I am sure they can sort it out. I hung up the phone. Dante did not have $18,000. He had spent his stolen cash on a boat deposit and a car lease. He was bleeding money he did not really have. When that bill hit his inbox, he would have to make a choice: his mother's luxury or his own facade. And I knew Dante. He would choose himself every single time. Loretta thought she had won a victory by helping him oust me. She did not realize she had just helped him cut the only lifeline she had. She was about to find out exactly how much a mother's love was worth in Dante's economy. And the answer was going to be less than $18,000. The air in the penthouse was thick with the dust of moving boxes and the heavier, suffocating weight of tension. Becky was in the living room folding Dante's shirts with a performative aggression, snapping the fabric as if she were disciplining it. Terrence was sprawled on the remaining sofa, scrolling through his phone, probably looking up odds for the weekend games. They were ignoring me, acting as if I were a ghost haunting my own home, but I was not a ghost. I was the poltergeist. I sat at the kitchen island, my new laptop open in front of me. On the screen was the file Silas had compiled. It was a comprehensive list of Terrence's gambling debts: $75,000 owed to various bookies and underground casinos. It was a roadmap of addiction and stupidity. I looked at Becky. She was humming to herself, smug in her belief that she was the superior wife, the one who stood by her man. She did not know she was standing by a man who was drowning in debt. It was time to introduce a little transparency into their marriage. I opened my email client. I composed a new message. Subject line: Urgent financial disclosures. I attached the debt file. In the body of the email, I typed a generic message about asset allocation. Then, with a deliberate keystroke, I added Becky's email address to the recipient line. I hit send. I waited exactly 30 seconds. "Oh no," I said, my voice flat and devoid of actual concern. I looked up from my screen. "Becky, did you just get an email from me? I think I auto-filled the wrong address. Please just delete it without opening it. It contains sensitive financial data about Terrence." Becky froze. Her eyes lit up with predatory curiosity. Sensitive financial data. She thought she was about to see my bank accounts. She thought she was going to find out how much money I had, so she could help Dante take it. "Do not worry, Simone," she said, pulling her phone from her yoga pants pocket with lightning speed. "I will just delete it." She unlocked her phone. She tapped the notification. I watched her face. First there was greedy anticipation, then confusion, then a slow creeping horror that drained the blood from her cheeks. She was not looking at my assets. She was looking at a spreadsheet of Terrence's losses. She was looking at the dates that corresponded with withdrawals from their joint savings. She was seeing the name Big Al listed next to a figure that was equal to a year of private school tuition. "Becky," Terrence asked, looking up from his phone. "What is it?" Becky did not answer him immediately. She lowered the phone slowly, her hand trembling. She looked at her husband with a mixture of loathing and shock. "You told me the savings account was empty because of the market," she whispered. "You told me the investments were down." Terrence looked confused. "They are, babe. The economy is rough." "You liar!" she screamed. The sound was so sudden and shrill that Dante dropped the box he was holding in the hallway. "You gambled it. You gambled away our house down payment. $75,000. Terrence, you owe $75,000 to someone named Knuckles." Terrence scrambled off the couch, his face pale. "Babe, let me explain. That is old stuff. Simone paid that off." "No, I did not." I interjected calmly, taking a sip of water. "I paid off the first $50,000, Terrence. That list is from the last 6 months, since I cut you off." Becky turned on him like a viper. "You told me you were working late. You told me you were building the business with Dante. You were at the casino." She threw her phone at him. It bounced off his chest and landed on the rug. "I am done," she shrieked. "I am done supporting a loser. I stood by you because you said we were building a future. You are building a hole, and you are trying to bury me in it." Dante rushed into the room, trying to play peacekeeper. Becky, calm down. We just need to get through this week. Once the money from the house clears, we can fix this. Becky whirled on Dante, her loyalty evaporating in the heat of her rage. Fix it. With what, Dante? You are just as broke as he is. You are all frauds. The Williams brothers. A couple of broke losers pretending to be kings. She grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door. I am going to my mother's. Do not follow me, Terence, and do not ask me for money. I watched her go. The Team Williams alliance had just suffered a catastrophic structural failure. Terence was sobbing, Dante was yelling, and I just sat there closing the tab on my laptop. It is amazing how quickly a team falls apart when you stop paying for the uniforms. I sat in the living room reviewing the catering contract for the evening. The party was starting in 2 hours and the penthouse was buzzing with manic energy. Dante was shouting at a florist on the phone about the centerpiece arrangements, while Loretta was trying to steam the wrinkles out of her polyester gown in the hallway. The air smelled of hairspray and desperation. Then the door to the master suite opened, and Chantal stepped out. She was wearing the gold dress. I stopped scrolling on my tablet. I did not gasp. I did not yell. I simply watched her walk toward the full-length mirror in the foyer. It was a custom piece, a floor-length gown made of hand-stitched gold sequins and delicate silk mesh. It was a prototype sent to me by a designer friend in Milan for approval before it went into production. It was magnificent. It was also unfinished. Chantal was preening, turning this way and that, admiring her reflection. She had raided my archive closet, the one place I had not fully emptied, because it contained pieces that were too delicate to move without specialist packers. She must have broken the lock. She looked over at me, catching my reflection in the mirror. A smug grin spread across her face. Do not be mad, Simone, she said, smoothing her hands over her hips. I found this in the back. It was just gathering dust. Honestly, it is a crime to hide something this beautiful. Besides, it fits me way better than it would ever fit you. You do not have the curves for this kind of silhouette. Dante is going to lose his mind when he sees me in this. She did a little twirl and I heard it. A tiny, almost inaudible pop. It was the sound of a basting stitch giving way. I looked closely at the bodice. The fabric was pulled taut across her chest, straining against the temporary seams. The dress was never meant to be worn for more than a few minutes on a runway model who weighed nothing. It was held together by tacking thread and hope. It was not constructed for a night of dancing, drinking, and partying. It was a structural failure waiting to happen. I could have warned her. I could have told her that if she raised her arms above her shoulders or sat down too quickly, the entire back panel would likely disintegrate. I could have told her that she was wearing a ticking time bomb made of silk. Instead, I smiled. It was a warm, approving smile that confused her. You know what, Chantal? I said, my voice soft. You are right. That dress does not suit me at all. It needs a certain kind of confidence to pull off. It looks like it was made for you. Chantal blinked, surprised by the lack of resistance. She preened even more, arching her back. Another tiny pop echoed from the zipper line. Well, at least you can admit it, she huffed, fluffing her hair. I am going to be the star of this party. Everyone is going to be looking at me. Oh, they definitely will be, I assured her. You are going to make a lasting impression tonight, Chantal. No one will ever forget what you are wearing. She walked away, swaying her hips, confident in her theft. I watched her go, suppressing a laugh. She was walking into a room full of high-definition cameras and socialites, wearing a dress that was literally falling apart at the seams. She wanted to be the center of attention. I was just giving her exactly what she wanted. When that dress finally gave up the ghost, she would be exposed in every sense of the word. I sat in the shadows of the mezzanine watching Dante work the room below, like a politician on a desperate campaign trail. He was on his third phone of the hour, barking orders at a hapless event planner who thought she was working for a real estate mogul. He was building his audience. He was not satisfied with just a few friends or family members. He wanted a stadium. I could hear him dropping names into the receiver. He was inviting the local rappers, the reality TV stars, the influencers with millions of followers but zero credit scores. He wanted the noise. He wanted the flash. He wanted to publicly discard me in front of the new money crowd of Atlanta, thinking their applause would validate his choices. He did not realize that a circus needs more than just clowns. It needs a ringmaster. I retreated to my laptop and pulled up the event management software for the venue. Since I owned the building through Phoenix Holdings, I had administrative access to the digital guest list. I watched the names populate in real time. It was a who is who of people who leased their lifestyles. It was a list of people who would laugh at a train wreck but forget it by morning. I needed a different caliber of witness. I needed the people who owned the leases. I needed the people who could end a career with a single phone call. Silas sat across from me, his fingers flying across his own keyboard as he cross-referenced the guest list. He is capping the list at 200, Silas said. He wants it exclusive. He wants it to look like the hottest ticket in town. Expand it. I ordered, my voice low. Open the VIP tier. I have some invitations of my own to send. I began typing. I did not add socialites. I added the managing partners of the top 3 law firms in the city, including the firm that handled Dante's failed business filings. I added the regional director of the Securities and Exchange Commission. I added the board members of the charity organizations Loretta desperately wanted to join, but had been rejected from for years. I added the bankers who held the notes on the properties Dante pretended to own. But I did not send them a standard invitation. That would be ignored. These were busy, powerful people. They did not have time for a divorce party thrown by a man they barely respected. They needed something more intriguing. They needed bait. I drafted a separate digital invitation, encrypted and exclusive. The design was stark black and gold. The subject line read, "Immersive Performance Art, One Night Only." The body of the text was vague and pretentious, exactly the kind of thing that appealed to the bored elite. It promised a deconstruction of the modern American dream, a live viewing of hubris and consequence. It promised a spectacle that would redefine the social season. I hit send. Within minutes, the RSVPs started pinging back. Accepted, accepted. They had no idea they were coming to watch a forensic dissection of a fraudster. They did not know the main character was the host himself. Dante looked up from the floor below, beaming as his phone lit up with notifications. He saw the numbers climbing. He thought his popularity was exploding. He thought the city was rallying around him. "Look at this," he shouted to Chantal, grabbing her waist. "The RSVP count just doubled. Everyone wants to be here. We are going to be legends, babe." I closed my laptop. He was right about one thing. This night would be legendary, but not for the reasons he thought. He was building a stage for his coronation. I had just sold tickets to his execution. The late afternoon sun bathed the guest suite in a heavy golden glow that felt less like warmth and more like the spotlight on a stage before the curtain rises. I sat at the vanity mirror surrounded by an arsenal of cosmetics. This was not a beauty routine. This was a ritual of armoring up. I applied my foundation with the precision of a surgeon, masking the sleepless nights and the stress of the last 48 hours. I contoured my cheekbones until they looked sharp enough to cut glass. I lined my eyes with a winged tip that said, "I see everything and I forgive nothing." I reached for the final touch. A tube of matte lipstick in a shade called Vendetta Red. It was the color of power. It was the color of blood in the water. I uncapped it and leaned closer to the mirror, my hand steady as a rock. I traced the curve of my lips, filling in the crimson silence of the room. The door behind me swung open without a knock. Dante stood in the frame wearing a silk robe I had bought him for his birthday 2 years ago. He held a tumbler of whiskey, swirling the amber liquid with an arrogance that made my skin crawl. He looked me up and down, his lip curling into a sneer of amusement. "What is all this?" he asked, gesturing vaguely at my makeup spread. "Who are you trying to impress, Simone?" I did not turn around. I kept my eyes locked on my own reflection, carefully perfecting the arch of my lip. I am dressing for the occasion, Dante, I said, my voice calm. It is a big night. He laughed, a harsh barking sound that grated against the quiet concentration of the room. A big night for me, Simone. Not for you. You seem confused about your role here. You are not the hostess. You are not the wife. You are basically the help. I let you stay here out of pity so you could pack your boxes. If you are coming out of this room tonight, it better be to refill the ice buckets or hold Chantal's purse while she greets my guests. You are the wait staff, honey. Do not get it twisted. He took a swig of his drink, enjoying his own cruelty. He wanted me to cry. He wanted me to smudge my mascara with tears of humiliation and beg for a scrap of dignity. He wanted the broken woman he thought he had created. I finished the application. I blotted my lips on a tissue, leaving a perfect crimson stain. I capped the lipstick with a satisfying click that sounded like the chambering of a round. Then I slowly swiveled the stool around to face him. I looked him dead in the eye. I did not look like the help. I looked like the owner. You are right, Dante, I said, standing up and smoothing the silk of my dressing gown. I do have a job to do tonight. I am here to serve. He smirked, thinking he had finally broken me into submission. Good. Glad you finally know your place. Make sure the champagne is cold. I smiled. It was the smile of a wolf who just found the gate to the sheep pen unlocked. Oh, do not worry, I said, stepping closer to him until I could smell the fear buried beneath his expensive cologne. I am a professional, Dante. I know exactly how to curate a menu. I am serving a very special dish tonight just for you. I leaned in and whispered the punchline, my red lips inches from his ear. And you know what they say about revenge, Dante? It is a dish best served cold. Freezing cold. Dante frowned, the glass pausing halfway to his mouth. He looked at me, searching for a crack in my armor, but finding only steel. He shook his head, dismissing the chill that had just walked up his spine. You are crazy, he muttered, turning to leave. Just stay out of the way. I watched him go. He had no idea. The storm was not coming. I was the storm. The elevator doors slid open, revealing a scene of absolute decadence. My penthouse had been transformed into a nightclub for the delusional elite. A DJ was spinning in the corner, drowning out the hum of the city below with heavy bass. Waiters circulated with trays of caviar and champagne that Dante had charged to a line of credit that no longer existed. The room was filled with the glitterati of Atlanta. Rappers in diamond chains rubbed elbows with reality TV stars and influencers, all of them there to kiss the ring of the new king. And there was the queen. Chantal glided through the crowd wearing my stolen gold dress. She walked with a stiff, unnatural gait, terrified that a sudden movement would complete the job gravity had started on the seams. Every time she turned to pose for a selfie, I held my breath, waiting for the rip. She looked spectacular and ridiculous all at once, a golden statue built on a fault line. Trailing behind her was Becky. My sister-in-law had clearly decided that if she could not beat them, she would join them. She was carrying Chantal's clutch and fetching her fresh drinks, acting less like a family member and more like a paid assistant. She was desperate. She knew her husband was broke, and she was trying to secure her place on Dante's payroll before the ship went down. Oh, Chantal, you look stunning, Becky cooed loud enough for everyone to hear. That dress was made for you. It never looked that good on Simone. Chantal preened, tossing her hair over her shoulder. I know, right? It just needed someone with actual curves. I stood in the shadow of the hallway arch, sipping a glass of sparkling water. I was the ghost at the feast. A few guests noticed me. They whispered behind their hands, eyes darting from my red lips to Dante's oblivious back. They were the ones I had invited. The sharks, the lawyers, the bankers. They stood on the periphery, holding their drinks like weapons, waiting for the show to start. Dante was in the center of the room, holding a crystal flute of vintage Dom Perignon. He was sweating slightly under the lights, but his smile was blinding. He had his arm around a local developer, a man I knew was currently under investigation for zoning fraud. It was a chess move. Dante was booming his voice, carrying over the music. You have to know when to liquidate. I saw the market peak and I got out. 500,000 cash. Liquid. That is how you build an empire. You do not get emotional about bricks and mortar. You take the money and you run. The developer nodded, impressed by the bravado. Smart play, Dante. Cash is king. King Dante laughed, clinking his glass against the other man's. Exactly. And tonight we are celebrating the coronation. No more dead weight, no more asking for permission. This is the new era. He raised his glass high, scanning the room for admiration. His eyes slid right past me as if I were part of the furniture. He did not see the wife he had betrayed. He saw an obstacle he had already cleared, yet he was drowning in. I checked my watch. It was time. The guests were all here. The stage was set. The main character was delivering his monologue. It was time for the director to step in and cut the scene. I set my water glass down on a console table. The ice clinked softly, a tiny sound that signaled the beginning of the avalanche. I smoothed my silk gown, took a deep breath, and stepped into the light. The music died down abruptly as the DJ cut the faders. A sharp screech of feedback pierced the air, causing several guests to wince, but Dante did not seem to notice. He stood in the center of the sunken living room, holding a microphone he had demanded from the DJ booth. He looked flushed. The alcohol and the adrenaline of his own perceived magnificence had turned his skin a mottled red. He unbuttoned his suit jacket casually, trying to look like a relaxed billionaire addressing his shareholders. "Thank you everyone for coming," he bellowed, his voice booming off the glass walls. He waited for silence. He wanted total submission from the room. You know, they say that in life you have to be willing to burn bridges to light your way forward. For the last few years, I felt like I was walking in the dark. I was held back. I was anchored by people who did not share my vision, people who were content with mediocrity while I was chasing greatness. He paused for effect, looking vaguely in my direction, but not making eye contact. The room was silent, but it was not the silence of awe. It was the silence of embarrassment. Today I cut the anchor, he continued, raising his glass. I sold this penthouse. I liquidated the asset. Everyone told me I was crazy. They said the market was down. They said I should wait. But I do not wait. I act. I closed the deal in 24 hours. Cash. That is how you move when you are building an empire. This is not just a sale. This is seed money for the Dante Williams Group. We are going global. He took a long sip of his champagne, smiling at his own reflection in the window. But a king needs a queen. And for a long time, I was ruling alone. I was with someone who competed with me instead of supporting me. Someone who thought a marriage was a business contract. A ripple of uneasy murmurs went through the crowd. This was public humiliation masked as a toast. The lawyers and bankers I had invited exchanged glances. They knew exactly who the real power in the marriage was. They were watching a jester mock the queen. Dante reached out and grabbed Chantal's hand, pulling her roughly to his side. She stumbled slightly, her heels catching on the rug, and I saw her wince as the dress tightened across her ribs. "This is what a real woman looks like," Dante declared, gesturing at her like she was a new car. "She supports me. She believes in me. She does not nag me about spreadsheets or margins. She understands that a man needs freedom. Ladies and gentlemen, meet the future Mrs. Williams." He planted a wet, aggressive kiss on her mouth. Chantal giggled, trying to look adoring, but mostly looking terrified that her dress was about to explode. Dante pulled back, expecting thunderous applause. What he got was a polite smattering of clapping. It was the kind of applause you give a child who has just performed a bad magic trick. People looked at their feet. They looked at their drinks. They looked anywhere but at the couple preening in the center of the room. I stood leaning against the doorframe of the kitchen, my face a mask of bored amusement. I swirled the ice in my glass. Dante thought this was his moment of triumph. He thought he was shouting his victory from the mountaintop. He did not realize he was standing on a trapdoor, and my hand was hovering right over the lever. I took a slow, deliberate sip of my drink. The liquid was cold, just like the room was about to become. The applause died down quickly, replaced by the murmurs of guests, wondering why the ex-wife was walking toward the DJ booth with the determination of a predator. I moved through the crowd, and the sea of bodies parted for me. I did not ask for permission. I walked up the 3 steps to the raised platform where the DJ was queuing up the next track. He looked at me, his hand hovering over the mixer. I didn't say a word. I just reached out and slid the master volume fader all the way down to 0. The silence that hit the room was physical. It was sudden and heavy. The laughter stopped. The clinking of glasses stopped. Even the air conditioning seemed to hold its breath. Dante spun around, his annoyance flaring instantly. He glared at me from the center of the room. "Simone, what the hell are you doing?" he barked, his voice echoing awkwardly in the sudden quiet. "Get down from there. You are ruining the vibe. Go back to your room." I picked up the DJ's microphone. It was heavy in my hand, cold and solid. I tapped it once. The sound thumped through the massive speakers, making half the room jump. "So sorry to interrupt the festivities," I said, my voice smooth and magnified, filling every corner of the penthouse. "I know we are all here to celebrate Dante's big win." It was a beautiful speech, Dante. Truly inspiring. The part about burning bridges was particularly touching. Dante took a step toward me, his fists clenched. "Simone, I am warning you." But I continued, ignoring him completely. "You forgot one tiny detail in your toast. You introduced your new girlfriend. You introduced your new lifestyle. But you forgot to introduce the most important person in this transaction. You forgot to introduce the buyer." Dante stopped laughing nervously. He looked at the crowd, trying to regain control. "Nobody cares who the buyer is." "Simone," he scoffed, "it is an anonymous investment fund. It is a shell company. Who cares? Put the mic down, you are embarrassing yourself." I smiled. It was the smile of a teacher watching a student fail a test they tried to cheat on. "Actually, Dante, I think they care very much, especially since the buyer is in the room with us right now." I turned slightly and signaled the lighting technician I had stationed in the control booth. A young man I had paid $500 to follow my cues. "Lights, please." The room plunged into darkness. A collective gasp went through the crowd. Then the massive floor-to-ceiling LED screen behind me flared to life. It was blindingly bright. Slowly, a logo faded in from the black. It was elegant, sharp, gold letters on a black background, a stylized bird rising from ashes. Phoenix Holdings. I watched the recognition ripple through the VIP section. The bankers, the lawyers, and the investors I had invited all straightened up. They knew that logo. They knew the capital behind it. Dante shielded his eyes from the glare, squinting at the screen. He looked confused. He read the words out loud. "Phoenix Holdings." "Yes, Dante," I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous purr. "Phoenix Holdings. The company that bought your house this morning for 50 cents on the dollar. The company that wired you the cash you have been spending all day." I stepped out from behind the booth, walking to the edge of the platform so I was looking down at him. "You were so eager to sell, so eager to hide the money. You never bothered to check who owned the company. You never looked at the incorporation papers." I gestured to the massive screen where the logo loomed over him like a judge. "You sold the house to me, Dante." The room was so quiet, you could hear the ice melting in the champagne buckets. The logo of Phoenix Holdings hovered on the screen behind me like a golden judgment. I clicked the remote in my hand one more time. The image changed. It was now a scanned copy of the corporate registration documents from the Cayman Islands. It was dense legal text, but I had highlighted one specific line in bright yellow. "Beneficial owner and president Simone Williams." I watched Dante's face. It went through a fascinating transformation. First there was confusion, then denial, and finally a dawn of absolute horror that drained every drop of color from his skin. He looked like a man who had stepped off a curb and realized too late that a bus was coming. "That is a lie," he shouted, his voice cracking. "That is a fake slide. You are just trying to save face. Phoenix is a private equity firm. I spoke to the broker. You spoke to an intermediary, Dante. I corrected him, my voice echoing calmly through the penthouse. You spoke to an agent I hired. You were so desperate for quick cash, so eager to hide the assets from me, that you never asked who was signing the checks. You just saw the money and you grabbed it. I walked to the edge of the stage, looking down at him. He looked small now. The expensive suit I had bought him suddenly looked like a costume. Let us do some math, Dante. I know you struggle with numbers, but try to keep up. This penthouse was appraised last week at $2 million. That is the market value. That is what it is worth. I paused, letting the number hang in the air. The bankers in the VIP section were nodding. They knew the real estate values in this building. They were doing the calculations in their heads, and they were smiling. You sold it to Phoenix Holdings for $500,000, I continued. You accepted a cash offer that was 25% of the property's value. You were so busy trying to cheat me out of my share that you cheated yourself. I took a step closer, my voice dropping to a conversational tone that was somehow louder than a scream. Dante, you just gifted me $1.5 million in equity. You did not sell the house to a stranger. You sold it to me, and you gave me a 75% discount. I should be thanking you. This is the best business deal I have made all year. The crowd erupted. It started as a low rumble of shock and quickly turned into a roar of disbelief. I heard the distinct sound of laughter. It was not polite laughter. It was the cruel, mocking laughter of people watching a fool slip on a banana peel. "Oh my God, he played himself," someone shouted from the back. "She owns the house," another voice cried out. "He is partying in her house." Dante staggered back as if I had physically struck him. He bumped into a waiter, sending a tray of empty glasses crashing to the floor. The sound of breaking glass shattered whatever composure he had left. "No," he stammered, shaking his head violently. "No, that is impossible. The money is in my account. I have the cash. I won." "You have the cash I gave you, Dante," I said, pointing at him with the microphone. "You are spending my money to throw a party in my house to celebrate your own bankruptcy. You are not a king, Dante. You are a squatter. And you are not even a very smart one." I looked at the VIP section where the real power players were watching. They were raising their glasses to me. They recognized the move. It was a hostile takeover executed with surgical precision. Dante looked around the room, searching for an ally, searching for someone to tell him it was a nightmare. But all he saw were phones recording his humiliation and faces twisted in derision. He had invited the world to watch him win, and instead, they were watching him lose everything he thought he owned. The silence in the room was brittle enough to snap. I clicked the remote in my hand one last time. The screen behind me shifted from the corporate logo to a split-screen image. On the left was our marriage license from 10 years ago, signed with my genuine hand. On the right was the power of attorney Dante had used to sell the penthouse, signed with a clumsy digital imitation. The discrepancy was obvious, even from the back of the room. It was not just a forgery, it was an insult to the art of penmanship. "And here is the punchline, Dante," I said, my voice echoing off the vaulted ceilings. "You did not just sell my house to me for pennies. You did it using a fraudulent document. That signature is a fake. And because I am the owner of the company that bought the property, I noticed the irregularity immediately." Dante was shaking his head, his mouth opening and closing like a fish on a dock. "No," he wheezed. "That is a lie. I had rights. I had permission. You had nothing." I interrupted, my tone sharp as a scalpel. "That is a federal crime, Dante. It is called wire fraud. It is called identity theft. And since the transaction crossed state lines via the banking system, we are looking at federal jurisdiction. That carries a mandatory minimum sentence of 10 years. I took a step closer to the edge of the stage, looking down at him with pity. "But it gets better. You see, when a bank suspects fraud, especially involving a shell company and a large cash transfer, they have a protocol. It is called a suspicious activity report. I filed one 10 minutes ago. I pulled my phone out and held it up. The wire transfer for the $500,000 has been frozen, Dante. The account is locked pending a federal investigation. You cannot access a dime of it. You do not have the money for the car you leased. You do not have the money for the yacht you rented. You do not even have the money to pay the caterers standing in this room. You are not just broke, Dante. You are destitute. And by tomorrow morning you will be in custody. The word destitute hung in the air like smoke. It reached Chantal before it even fully registered with Dante. I saw the calculation happen in her eyes. She looked at Dante, who was sweating and trembling. She looked at the screen with the evidence of his crime. She realized in a heartbeat that the yacht, the trips, and the shopping sprees were gone. She was standing next to a man who was about to trade a penthouse for a prison cell. Her survival instinct kicked in faster than her loyalty. She let go of Dante's arm as if he were burning hot. She took a sharp step back, putting distance between herself and the sinking ship. "You are broke," she screeched, her voice piercing the silence. "You told me you were rich. You told me you handled it." She spun around to storm off, seeking an exit away from the cameras and the shame. But she moved too fast. She forgot about the warning I had given her in the mirror. She forgot about the delicate, unfinished seams of the gold dress she had stolen. As she twisted her torso to run, there was a loud, undeniable tearing sound. It sounded like a sail ripping in a gale. The entire back panel of the sequined gown gave way. The fabric parted from neck to waist, revealing her Spanx and the price tag she had forgotten to remove. She froze. The room erupted. It was not a ripple of laughter this time. It was a tidal wave. The guests were doubling over, pointing phones, flashing. Chantal tried to cover herself, clutching the shreds of the dress. But it was too late. She was exposed. The Golden Girl was falling apart literally and figuratively. Dante reached for her instinctively. "Chantal, wait!" She slapped his hand away, clutching her ruined dress. "Don't touch me!" she screamed. "You are a loser! A broke loser." I stood on the podium watching the chaos unfold. It was a masterpiece of disaster. The fraudster was bankrupt, the mistress was humiliated, and the audience was having the time of their lives. I raised my glass to the room. The show was officially over. I turned my eyes to the corner where Terrence and Becky were trying to make themselves invisible. They were inching toward the exit, hoping to slip away amidst the chaos of Chantal's wardrobe malfunction and Dante's meltdown. They looked like two rats trying to scurry off a sinking ship before the water hit the upper decks. But I had not forgotten them. I had not forgotten the snide comments about my career or the way they leached off my bank account for years while smiling to my face. "Terrence, Becky," I said into the microphone. My voice stopped them dead in their tracks. "Do not leave just yet. We have a little bit of housekeeping to settle. Literally." They turned slowly. Becky looked like a deer caught in the headlights of a semi-truck. Terrence looked like he was about to vomit. You see, I continued walking to the edge of the stage. I was reviewing the asset list of Dante's shell company, the one I just seized control of to cover his fraudulent debts. And I found something interesting. It turns out that the beautiful suburban home you two have been living in for 3 years is not actually in your name. It is held by the LLC. It is a corporate asset. I paused, letting the legal reality sink in. Since Dante used company funds to pay for it, and since Dante now owes me millions, the company, and everything it owns, now belongs to me. That includes the roof over your heads. That includes the bed you sleep in. That includes the very driveway you park your leased cars on. Becky let out a strangled gasp, clutching Terrence's arm. "And since I am restructuring the portfolio, I have decided to liquidate that property immediately," I said, checking my watch with exaggerated casualness. "I sent a property management team over there about 30 minutes ago. They are changing the locks as we speak. You have exactly 60 minutes to get there and remove your personal effects before the code is scrambled. If you are not there, whatever is left inside becomes the property of Phoenix Holdings." The color drained from Becky's face so fast, she looked like a ghost. She turned on Terence with the ferocity of a wild animal. "You told me the house was ours," she shrieked, pushing him hard enough that he stumbled back into a waiter. "You told me the deed was in the safe. You said we were secure." Terence stammered, holding his hands up in defense. "I thought it was. Dante said he took care of it." "Dante!" Becky screamed, her voice reaching a pitch that made the speakers crackle. "You trusted Dante. You gambled away our savings and you trusted a fraud with our home. We are homeless, Terence. We have nothing." She began to hit him, pummeling his chest with her small, hard clutch. She was sobbing hysterical tears of rage and ruin. The perfect facade of the supportive wife had shattered completely, leaving only a desperate woman realizing she had bet on the wrong brother. And then there was Loretta. She stood near the buffet table, watching her sons destroy each other. She saw Dante broken on the floor. She saw Terence getting beaten by his wife. She realized that her free ride, her luxury nursing home, and her status were all evaporating. She did the only thing she knew how to do when she lost control. She grabbed her chest. "Oh, my heart," she wailed loudly, looking around to make sure people were watching. "My heart cannot take this." She swayed dramatically and then collapsed onto the floor. It was a terrible performance. She made sure to land on a plush rug, and she adjusted her skirt as she fell. I leaned into the microphone one last time. "Save the acting, Loretta." I said, my voice dry. "The paramedics charge for the ride, and I am definitely not paying for it. Someone call a taxi. The show is over. Get out of my house. All of you." The chaos in the room was silenced not by a shout, but by the heavy mechanical slide of the elevator doors opening. Two men stepped out. They were not wearing party clothes. They were not holding champagne glasses. They wore navy blue windbreakers with yellow lettering on the back that read, "Economic Crimes Unit." Behind them stood two uniformed officers. The air in the penthouse shifted instantly from a reality show drama to a crime scene investigation. Dante saw them and stopped breathing. The color that had drained from his face earlier did not return. He looked like a wax figure that was beginning to melt under the heat of the lights. He tried to straighten his jacket. He tried to summon the arrogance that had carried him through 30 years of mediocrity, but his hands were shaking too hard. "Gentlemen," he stammered, his voice pitching too high. "There has been a misunderstanding. A clerical error. My lawyers are handling it." The lead detective did not smile. He did not look impressed by the view or the guests or the expensive suit. He walked straight up to Dante, moving with the heavy inevitability of a glacier. "Dante Williams," he said, his voice flat and bored. "You are under arrest for wire fraud, bank fraud, and aggravated identity theft." Dante took a step back, bumping into the podium where I had just destroyed his life. "No," he whispered. "You cannot do this. I am a businessman. I just closed a deal. Ask her. Ask my wife." He pointed a trembling finger at me. He was pleading with his eyes. He was begging me to save him. He wanted me to be the fixer one last time. He wanted me to make the bad men go away like I had done with his credit card bills and his car accidents. I stepped down from the DJ booth. The crowd parted for me like the Red Sea. I walked slowly, my heels clicking on the hardwood floor, a rhythmic countdown to his end. I stopped inches from him. I looked at the handcuffs the officer was pulling from his belt. The metal caught the light of the chandelier. "I am not your wife, Dante." I said, my voice soft enough that he had to lean in to hear me. "I am the witness." The officer spun Dante around. He slammed Dante's chest against the DJ booth. The sound of the cuffs ratcheting shut was loud and final. Click, click. Dante let out a sob. It was a pathetic, broken sound. "Simone, please, do not let them take me. I cannot go to jail. I am not built for jail. I have big plans. I have ideas." I signaled the officer to wait a moment. I stepped into Dante's personal space. I could smell the fear on him. It smelled like sweat and cheap champagne. I leaned up, brushing my lips against his ear, just like a lover would. "You always said you wanted to be an entrepreneur, Dante," I whispered. "You said you wanted to build something from nothing. You said you just needed the time and the space to study the greats." I pulled back just enough to look him in the eye. Well, you got your wish. Prison has a wonderful library. Go in there and learn. Maybe in 10 years when you get out, you will finally know how to run a business without stealing from the woman who fed you. I nodded to the officer. Take him away. The detective grabbed Dante by the arm and marched him toward the elevator. Dante twisted his head back, looking at the party, looking at the luxury, looking at me. He was screaming my name as the doors closed, cutting off his voice and sealing his fate. The room was silent. I picked up my glass of champagne and took a sip. It was finally cold enough. The elevator doors had barely clicked shut on Dante's wailing figure before the next act of the tragedy began. Loretta, who had been lying on the Persian rug, clutching her chest in a performance of mortal distress, experienced a miraculous recovery. Laying dead was not going to save her. She saw the guests staring at her with judgment rather than pity. She saw the security guards moving in to clear the room. She realized she was alone in a den of wolves, and her protector was in handcuffs. She scrambled to her knees. She did not stand up with dignity. She crawled. She actually crawled across the phone. Baby, please, you have to listen to me. He made me do it. Dante is sick. He has demons. But we are family, you and me. You. We have always been close. I welcomed you into this family. I treated you like a daughter. Do not throw me out. Do not let them take me. I looked down at her. I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a profound sense of fatigue. This was the woman who had called me barren. This was the woman who had demanded my jewelry for her son's mistress. This was the woman who had sat in my kitchen eating my food while plotting to leave me homeless. Get up, Loretta, I said, my voice cold enough to freeze the tears on her cheeks. You are embarrassing yourself, and you are staining my dress. She struggled to her feet, clutching my hands, her grip surprisingly strong. We can fix this, she pleaded. I will testify against him. I will tell the police he forced me to sign those papers. Just let me stay. I have nowhere to go, Simone. The Gables will kick me out tonight. I am an old woman. You cannot leave an old woman on the street. It is not Christian. I pulled my hands away from her grasp. I reached into the small clutch I was holding and pulled out a single folded piece of paper. It was not a check. It was a brochure. A brochure for a facility on the south side of the city. One that did not have a heated pool or a private chef. You are right, Loretta, I said, smoothing the paper and handing it to her. I would never leave you on the street. I have arranged for your transfer. She took the paper, her eyes scanning it frantically. Her face crumpled. Pineview Care Center, she whispered. Simone, this is a state facility. This is a warehouse for poor people. They have shared rooms. They serve cafeteria food. It smells like bleach and despair. I cannot live here. I am a Williams. You are a broke Williams, I corrected her. And beggars cannot be choosers. I have paid for the first month. It is a shared room with 3 other women. I hear the bingo nights are very competitive. I signaled to the security team who were waiting by the door. After this month is up, you will have to make your own arrangements, I added as 2 large men stepped forward to take her arms. I suggest you call Becky. I am sure she will be thrilled to take you in. Although considering she is currently homeless herself, you might have to share a tent. Loretta realized what was happening. The panic set in. She began to scream. It was a high, piercing sound of pure entitlement being crushed by reality. No, you cannot do this. I need my spa treatments. I need my driver. Unhand me. I am Loretta Williams. The guards did not care who she was. They took her by the elbows and marched her toward the service elevator. She kicked and screamed, dragging her heels across the floor, leaving scuff marks on the wood. I watched her go. She had spent 10 years looking down on me from a pedestal I had paid for. Now she was going to the one place where my money would never reach her again. The silence that followed her exit was the most beautiful sound I had heard all night. The silence that followed was not empty, it was heavy. It was the sound of a vacuum sealing shut after all the air had been sucked out of a room. The police lights had faded into the distance, taking the screaming Dante and his shattered dreams with them. The guests had scattered like cockroaches when the kitchen light turns on, leaving behind half-empty glasses and the faint scent of scandal. I stood alone in the center of the penthouse. It was finally mine. Not legally. It had always been legally mine. But now it was spiritually mine. I picked up my phone and dialed the number for a biohazard cleaning service I used for industrial accidents. It might have seemed excessive for a party cleanup, but I did not just want the floors mopped. I wanted the DNA of the last 10 years scrubbed from the premises. I need a full sterilization crew, I told the dispatcher. Yes, tonight. I want everything that is not bolted down removed. If it touched them, burn it. I will pay double for the speed. I hung up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city of Atlanta sprawled out below me, a grid of gold and amber lights breathing in the humid night. It looked different tonight. Before it had looked like a cage. Now it looked like a chessboard, and I was the only player left on the board. I had moved every piece. I had sacrificed the pawns. I had captured the king. And I had done it without a single wrinkle in my silk dress. My phone buzzed one last time against the glass table. I glanced at it, expecting another desperate plea from Becky or a threat from a lawyer. It was neither. It was a text message from Alexander Sterling, the CEO of a rival investment firm in New York. A man who played the game at my level. I saw the news about the acquisition. The text read, "Ruthless efficiency, Simone. I have always admired a woman who knows how to clean house. I am flying into Atlanta tomorrow. Dinner. I think we have a future to discuss." I stared at the words. A future. For so long my future had been tied to an anchor dragging me down. Now the line was cut. I was drifting, but I was not lost. I was free. I picked up the crystal tumbler I had been holding. It was empty now, save for a single melting ice cube. It was part of the set I had bought for our first anniversary. It was heavy. It was expensive. It was beautiful. And it belonged to a life that no longer existed. I finished the last drop of the drink, letting the cold burn slide down my throat. It tasted like closure. I walked over to the gas fireplace, which was flickering with artificial flames. I did not hesitate. I did not look back. I raised the glass and hurled it into the hearth. The sound of shattering crystal was sharp and violent, a sudden explosion that echoed through the empty house. Shards of glass sparkled in the firelight like diamonds. It was done. The debt was paid. The ledger was balanced. I turned my back on the fire and walked toward the elevator. The cleaning crew would be here in 10 minutes. By morning, there would be no trace that Dante Williams ever lived here. There would be only me and the city waiting for my next move. I pressed the button for the lobby. I was ready to start living. The most profound lesson we can take from Simone's victory is that financial literacy is the ultimate form of self-defense. In a world where people like Dante confuse expensive objects with actual wealth, understanding the mechanics of money is what separates the masters from the victims. Simone did not win simply because she was angry. She won because she was prepared, and she understood that knowledge is the only currency that matters. She showed us that when you control the assets, you control the narrative. While Dante played checkers with his emotions, Simone played chess with contracts, proving that the most dangerous person in the room is the one who stays calm while everyone else is losing their minds. This story teaches us to value dignity over drama, and to never let anyone else hold the keys to our security. True independence is not just about having the strength to walk away from a